All right, we're back again. This time we're going to do some factoring, where we're given a factor to pull out of a given expression. So first we're given factor 3 out of the expression 12x plus 21. And factoring is just undoing the distributive property. We've talked about the distributive property, and factoring is undoing that. It's going backwards. So if we're going to factor 3 out of this expression, we want to set something up that looks like this, where we would distribute this 3 inside the parentheses if we had values here. And our job is to find out what these values are. What are these values so that once we do distribute this 3, we get the expression we're given. So we have a 3 on the outside because we are told to factor the 3 out of the expression. And we have 2 blanks here because there are 2 terms in the expression that we're given. So we first have to ask ourselves, what is 3, or 3 times what gives us 12x? Well, we know that 3 times 4 is 12, and then if there's no x in this factor here, there must be a factor of x on that first term, so we're going to put a 4x there because 3 times 4x is 12x. Then we have one more term. This one's a little bit easier because we're not working with a variable at all, it's just 21. So 3 times what gives us 21? And that answer would be 7. So if I take this out of the line, what this would look like if we were to write it down would look like this. 3 times the quantity, 4x plus 7. That is the factored version if we factor 3 out of the expression 12x plus 21. Because if we now distributed this 3, if we took this expression and expanded it using the distributive property, we would end up with this expression right here. Let's do another one. Factor negative 2 out of the expression, negative 10x minus 12. So once again, we know we'll set it up like this because we are factoring negative 2 out. And once again, we have 2 blanks because there are 2 terms in our final expression. So we first ask ourselves, negative 2 times what gives us negative 10? Well, negative 2 is a negative times what gives us a negative. That would be a positive, so it would be positive 5. And then x, because this negative 2 does not have an x, and we want an x in the final term. So negative 2 times 5x gives us negative 10x. Move on to the second term, and notice I have a plus here, which is fine. We can accommodate for the negative here in a moment if we need to. Negative 2 times what gives us negative 12. And a negative times a positive is a negative, so we want this number to be a positive so that our answer ends up as a negative 12. And 2 times 6 is 12, so we would leave this as a positive 6 because again, negative 2 times positive 6 gives us a negative 12 in our final answer there. So if we were to write this without those lines there, we would have negative 2 times the quantity, 5x plus 6. If we were to distribute this, we would get this expression here. Let's do another one. This time we'll throw a variable in the factor. So we're going to factor 7x out of the expression 28xy plus 14x. So once again, we'll pull out that 7x. We're looking for what goes in the first blank here. And then again, there are 2 blanks because there are 2 terms in our final expression. 7x times what gives us 28xy? Well, 7 times 4 gives us 28. And notice there's no y in the 7x, but there's a y in our final, in that first term there. So we will add 4, put in 4y, because 7x times 4y gives us 28xy. Second term, we want it to be 14x, so 7x times what gives us 14x? Well, 7 times 2 would give us 14, and the x that appears here is already accounted for in what we pulled out of the factor 7x. So if we write that without those blanks there, we would have 7x times the quantity, 4y plus 2, and once again, if you were to distribute the 7x to each term inside the parentheses here, you would get this expression here. And one more, we'll now factor h. We'll factor out a variable now, just a variable, h out of the expression 7h squared plus 16h. So once again, we know we're factoring h out, so we're going to pull that on the outside of the parentheses. Once again, 2 blanks because there are 2 terms. H times what gives us 7h squared? Well, there's no number here, so we know we have to have a 7 on the inside. And we're going to have a 7h on the inside because h times h is h squared. When we multiply 2 things together are the same, we can use an exponent to kind of shorten up that multiplication. So h times 7h would be 7h squared. And then we have a blank here. We want this to be 16h. Once we distribute this h times what gives us 16h. That would be 16. H times 16 is 16h. So if we were to write that without the parentheses, or without the blanks, I'm sorry, we would write h times the quantity, 7h plus 16.